I knew something was wrong the moment I saw 3 black SUVs crawling up the dirt road toward my dad's farm. You don't get that kind of convoy out here unless somebody's lost, running from the cops, or representing an HOA with too much money and too little sense. Dad always told me people will leave you alone if you leave them alone. But apparently that rule doesn't apply to organizations that think they run the world because they control lawn height and mailbox colors. I grabbed my phone and started recording before they even parked. Over the years, I'd learned that when people show up with clipboards, it's never for anything good, especially not when they step out wearing matching polos with shiny silver HOA emblems stitched like a badge. They moved in formation, all stiff shoulders and clipped walking pace, like they were about to serve a search warrant on a farm that had existed long before their subdivision even had electricity. The leader, a woman who looked like she practiced yelling at cashiers for sport, removed her sunglasses and scanned the fields like she owned them. "You must be Michael," she said, giving me the smile people use right before they tell you they're about to ruin your life. "I'm Patricia, HOA president." I didn't shake her hand. "This is private property," I said. "You're not in the HOA's jurisdiction. I checked the boundaries years ago." Her smile widened, but her eyes didn't. "Yes, about that. There seems to be some confusion. Your father's farm sits on land that is now under the newly expanded Golden Pines Residential Association." I almost laughed. No, it doesn't." "Oh, but it does," she sang. "As of last month." Behind me, one of Dad's horses snorted like it could smell the nonsense, too. Patricia strutted closer, lowering her voice. "You need to remove the animals, the old barns, the fencing, and any structures not approved by the board. Technically, you're in violation of 43 separate HOA codes." I stared at her, stunned for a full second. Then I lifted my phone higher, making sure her face filled the frame. "Say that again. For the recording." Her expression flickered. "Recording? Why would you need to record?" "Because none of this makes sense," I said. "And because everything you're saying sounds illegal." That was the moment I saw it. The tiny, irritated twitch in her jaw that told me I was 100% right to hit record. She took a step back and motioned to the man behind her, who pulled a thick binder from his briefcase. "We have maps, bylaws, documentation." "Cool. Leave on the ground," I said. "You're trespassing." Patricia ignored me and marched past like I didn't exist. Her team followed her across the yard, pointing at everything. Dad's tractor, the barn he built by hand, the orchard he planted in the early 80s. They spoke like inspectors listing violations, and each word made my chest tighten. Dad wasn't here to shut them down. He was in the hospital, recovering from a stroke. That was the only reason I'd come back home in the first place. The farm wasn't just dirt and wood. It was the only thing he ever loved more than me. And these people wanted it gone. I followed them, recording every second. "You can't annex land without the owner's permission," I said. "And you sure as hell can't just show up and demand we demolish a working farm." Patricia waved me off. "Well, you see, when the county commissioners updated zoning lines—" "They didn't," I interrupted. "I checked 2 days ago." She froze for half a heartbeat, like a computer glitching. Then she recovered. "We've been in contact with them. It's complicated. But for now, consider this your official notice. You have 7 days to bring this property into compliance." I couldn't believe the arrogance. 7 days? "Lady, this farm has existed since 1952. She smiled sweetly. "Rules are rules." My blood pressure spiked so hard I swear my ears rang. If you're watching this later, just know this is the exact moment I decided I wasn't going to let the HOA bully my father out his land. Not while I was breathing. One of the men walked around Dad's chicken coop and muttered, "This structure isn't approved." Another pointed at Dad's old tractor. "This isn't permitted to be stored outdoors in a residential zone." Another actually wrote down a note about the smell of hay. Hay. On a farm. That's when I said it. Loud enough for the camera. If you're enjoying this train wreck so far, hit subscribe because it's about to get worse. They messed with the wrong family. Patricia spun around. "You're filming for the internet?" "Yep." "You can't." This is private property. I can record anything I want. Her lips thinned into a single angry line. She whispered something to the man beside her, and suddenly he walked right up to me like he expected me to back down. I didn't. He said, "We'll be back with law enforcement." I raised an eyebrow. "Please do." They got back into their SUVs, leaving behind tire ruts like scars across the driveway. As soon as they were gone, I stopped the recording and paced the yard for a solid minute, trying to calm the pounding in my chest. I needed evidence. Proof. Anything that would keep them from ripping this place apart. I went inside Dad's house and pulled the old file box from his office closet. Inside were land deeds, survey lines, every scrap of paper he ever kept. I found the original property map. Thick, yellowed paper with handwritten measurements. The farm boundaries were exactly where I remembered. Then I found something even better. A letter from Dad, dated 4 months before his stroke. "Son, if you're reading this, something probably happened. Everything on this farm is yours to protect. Don't let anyone take advantage of you. People will try. They always do." My throat tightened. Dad always had a way of predicting trouble before it arrived. I spent the next few hours digging through online county records, comparing maps, researching zoning laws. Nothing, absolutely nothing, supported the HOA claim. Their expanded territory didn't include the farm, not even close. So why were they so confident? That question kept echoing in my head as the sun went down and the sky turned deep purple. The farm looked peaceful from the porch, fireflies drifting between the trees, crickets chirping like everything was normal. But I had a feeling the HOA wasn't done. And I was right. At 9:47 p.m., headlights appeared at the end of the driveway. I grabbed my phone again and stepped outside. A police cruiser rolled up the gravel path, crunching slowly until it stopped in front of the house. An officer stepped out, a guy in his late 50s with a mustache that could command respect all by itself. He approached me calmly. "You Michael?" "Yes, sir. I got a report from the Golden Pines HOA about a disturbance and some boundary dispute. Of course they called the cops. Of course they did." I handed him the printed property map. "This is our land." "They're lying." He took his time looking it over. "They told me this farm was now under their authority." "It's not." He sighed. "I suspected as much. They've been pulling stunts lately, trying to expand influence. Half the homeowners hate them." My shoulders loosened slightly. "So what happens now?" "I'll file a report. But be careful. When people get power hungry, they get bold." He paused. "You recording all this?" "Every second." "Good. Keep doing that." He left as quietly as he came. For a moment, I thought maybe things would settle. Maybe the HOA would back off now that law enforcement wasn't buying their nonsense. I was wrong again. At 5:32 the next morning, I woke to the sound of engines. Multiple. I ran outside barefoot. Phone already recording. A construction crew was parked at the edge of the property. Workers were stretching, unloading equipment, demolition gear. Patricia stepped out her SUV like a villain in a bad movie. "Good morning, Michael," she chirped. "We're here to begin compliance adjustments." "Compliance adjustments?" I repeated. "You mean destruction?" She shrugged. "Tomato, tomato." I positioned myself between the crew and the barn. "You're not touching a single structure on this land." Patricia leaned in, speaking low. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Oh, I think I do," I said. "Someone who thinks rules don't apply to them." Her smile vanished. "Move." "No." She raised her hand to signal the workers. But behind her, one of the construction guys hesitated. "Ma'am, we can't just start demolishing if the owner's refusing. That's illegal." Patricia hissed. "We have authority." "No, you don't," I said, raising my phone. "I'll post this everywhere." She froze, eyes locked on the camera lens. Then she did something I didn't expect. She pulled out a folded paper and shoved it at me. "This is a legal notice. Signed yesterday." I unfolded it, and my stomach dropped. It was a county document, official seal, stamped, dated, and it declared the property subject to pending zoning review under Golden Pines Residential Association district expansion. Pending zoning review. Where the hell did that come from? Nice try, I said, even though my pulse was hammering. This is a review notice, not a ruling. Interpret however you want, she snapped. We're proceeding. But before she could turn, the construction foreman stepped in again. Ma'am, pending review means stop work, not start. She glared at him so hard, he actually stepped backward. Then she turned back to me. If I can't take your buildings down today, I'll take something else. What? I asked. Her lips curled into a sinister smile. A smile that told me she wasn't bluffing. But before she could reveal her threat, her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Her expression cracked for the first time. She walked away quickly, whispering urgently into phone. And that's when I noticed it. Her driver, the man who'd been quiet yesterday, walked around the side of the barn, holding something metallic. Not a tool, not a clipboard. Something small, shiny, and absolutely out of place on a farm. A padlock and chain. He wasn't here to demolish anything. He was here to lock something. Or someone. And that's when I realized they weren't done trying to take the property. They were escalating. And the thing they were planning next was way worse than demolition. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but the shadows it cast across the farm already felt like they were alive. I could still see the shiny padlock the driver held yesterday, and something about it made my gut twist. The previous day had been a warm-up. Today felt like the main act. I grabbed my phone, made sure it was recording, and stepped out into the crisp morning air. Every step across the gravel driveway made my heart race like a drum. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement. 3 SUVs appeared again. My phone immediately caught their glinting headlights, but I noticed something different. This time, the vehicles weren't alone. Behind them, a delivery truck pulled up, packed with crates, tools, and something that looked suspiciously like reinforced cages. My mind went cold. Patricia stepped out first, her sunglasses reflecting the morning sun. She didn't bother with pleasantries this time. "Good morning, Michael," she said, her voice flat but carrying that same venomous certainty. "We're here to enforce compliance." I lifted my phone, recording everything. "You do know that's legal, right?" She smirked, and that smirk made my blood run cold. "Oh, we know. But legality is flexible. You might find that out soon enough." I clenched my fists. The construction crew from yesterday was back, but they seemed hesitant. Foreman John whispered to me, "They're really pushing it this time. I've never seen anything like this." "Neither have I muttered. Patricia waved her hand, and suddenly the workers were unloading the crates. I could see they weren't just demolition tools this time. There were chains, padlocks, and heavy-duty steel cages. My stomach lurched. "What are those for?" I demanded, stepping in front of one of the cages. Patricia's eyes glinted with that cold, calculating calm she perfected. "Oh, just precautionary measures," she said, as if she were talking about putting a leash on a puppy. "We wouldn't want anything or anyone wandering where they shouldn't." I raised an eyebrow, my mind racing. "You're seriously planning to lock something up?" "Yes," she said, her voice calm and unervingly sweet. "It's the only way to ensure compliance." My blood boiled. This is a farm, not a prison. She took a step forward, and I instinctively moved back, still recording. "Sometimes," she said softly, almost whispering, "people need to be reminded who's in charge." I froze. She wasn't talking about the property. She was talking about me. That's when I saw the driver move. He approached Dad's old barn, the padlock in his hand. My phone zoomed in as I ran toward him. "Stop," I shouted. "You touched that barn and you're breaking the law." He didn't flinch. He slipped the padlock onto the door's latch, clicking it shut with a metallic snap. The sound echoed through the yard like a gunshot. I lunged forward, but one of the construction workers stepped in. "I can't stop her," he muttered under his breath. I looked back at Patricia. "This is insane. You can't do this without a court order." Her smile returned, sharper this time. Michael were past words. Actions speak louder. I grabbed a nearby rake and swung it at the lock. It didn't budge. They were prepared. Every lock, every chain, they were expecting resistance. Then I remembered Dad's advice. Don't react emotionally. Document. Outsmart them. I took a step back, still recording. The camera captured everything. The padlocked barn, the steel cages, the smirks, the SUVs waiting like wolves at the edge of the property. Suddenly, one of the cages rattled. A worker opened a crate, revealing its contents. Inside were several aggressive-looking guard dogs, trained, clearly not ordinary pets. My chest tightened. They weren't just trying to take the property. They were trying to intimidate, trap, and threaten. I swallowed hard. You can't bring animals here to intimidate me. I yelled, "This is harassment." Patricia raised a hand, signaling the men to hold the dogs back. "Just a precaution," she said, with that same calm cruelty. "They obey orders, Michael. You might find that difficult." My mind raced. I had to act fast, but carefully. Any rash move could escalate this further. I backed toward the farmhouse, using my phone to capture the entire scene. I needed evidence. Every word, every move. I needed a record in case this went to court. One of the dogs barked suddenly, lunging forward. I stepped back, slipping on the gravel. My heart pounded. I could feel the tension like a live wire running through the yard. Patricia stepped closer. "You see, Michael," she said softly, "we give warnings. You ignored the first one. This is the second." I didn't flinch. "I'm not afraid of you." She tilted her head, studying me like a predator studying prey. "We'll see about that." At that moment, one of the workers accidentally dropped a steel cage near the barn. The sound was deafening. The guard dogs growled. I could see panic in the eyes of the crew. Even Patricia's calculated demeanor faltered for a split second. That split second was all I needed. I lunged forward, grabbing the fallen cage and dragging it between the dogs and me. The noise startled them, giving me just enough time to step toward the farmhouse door. I slammed it shut behind me, locking it. My phone still recorded everything. Patricia pounded on the door, yelling, "Open up!" I stayed calm. Deep breaths. Document everything. Outsmart them. Dad's words rang in my ears. People will try. They always do. I peeked out the window. Patricia was speaking into her phone again. Her SUV's lights blinked, signaling someone else. My stomach sank. They weren't alone. This was bigger than I thought. I ran to the basement, Dad's old surveillance setup still intact. I hooked up a camera to capture the front yard and the driveway. Everything was visible. The SUVs, the crates, the chains, the looming presence of Patricia and her team. Then I noticed a new development. At the far edge of the property, just beyond the tree line, a black van rolled in silently. No lights, no markings. Just there. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. Who else were they bringing? Patricia noticed me at the window. Her eyes narrowed. She waved at the van. The driver from yesterday jumped out, carrying another steel cage. I could feel panic rising, but I forced myself to stay calm. Document, outsmart, protect. Then I remembered the old tool shed behind the barn. It wasn't locked. If I could lure the cages and the dogs there, I might be able to trap them long enough for authorities to arrive. I formulated a plan in seconds, my pulse pounding in my ears. Every step had to be precise. One wrong move, and the situation could spiral out of control. I grabbed the farmhouse PA system and spoke through it. "Attention! You are trespassing on private property. Cease all activity immediately, or law enforcement will be contacted." Patricia laughed. "Do you really think a little speaker will stop us?" I smiled. "No, but it will buy me 30 seconds. That's all I need." 30 seconds became 10 minutes. I baited the cages, distracted the dogs, and managed to lock the steel cages inside the tool shed. The van driver tried to intervene, but was caught in the sudden rush of equipment and metal I had improvised. I ran back to the house, recording everything. Patricia's face twisted in frustration. She waved her hands frantically, yelling orders I couldn't even hear over the sound of barking and metal clanging. The black van sped off, leaving the remaining SUVs momentarily frozen. I saw a flicker of doubt in Patricia's eyes. For the first time, I realized something important. They were confident, but they weren't invincible. I called the sheriff, explained the situation, sent him live footage from my phone and the surveillance system. Every move, every violation, every threat, all documented. By the time the sheriff arrived, Patricia and her team had regrouped, but the damage was done. They had underestimated me. My phone, the cameras, the traps, I had evidence, leverage, and momentum. As the sheriff stepped out his cruiser and approached the SUVs, Patricia turned and disappeared behind one of the SUVs, whispering furiously into her phone. I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I sank onto porch steps, exhausted but exhilarated, my chest heaving, mind spinning. This was bigger than I ever imagined. And if they thought a few chains and cages would scare me off, they were dead wrong. Because from this moment on, I wasn't just defending the farm. I was preparing for war. And this war was going to get personal. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the cages, the chains, the dogs, Patricia's smile, cold and sharp like a blade sliding across glass. Even after the sheriff left, warning the HOA crew not to touch a single inch of property, I knew deep down it wasn't finished. People like Patricia don't stop when they're told no. They double down. They get creative. They escalate. I sat on the porch at 3 a.m., phone in hand, watching the security cameras Dad had installed years ago. I'd upgraded them earlier, 2 facing the driveway, 1 pointed at the barn, 1 on the tool shed, and a new one on the orchard. The feeds flickered across the screen. Everything looked calm. Too calm. The cicadas buzzed in the background, a low hum under the night. A breeze rustled the old wind chimes Dad hung decades ago. But something fell off. Too still. Too quiet. Then, at 3:17 a.m., the driveway camera caught movement. Headlights off. A vehicle creeping forward without sound. My chest tightened. Another SUV? Another van? No, this one was different. Long, dark, armored-looking. A security vehicle, not police, not county. Private. My stomach dropped. The HOA had brought in private security? Who the hell did they think they were? I zoomed in. 2 men stepped out, wearing dark tactical gear. Not uniforms. Gear. Heavy vests, radios, flashlights, earpieces. One held a crowbar. The other had a bolt cutter strapped to his leg. "You've got to be kidding me," I whispered. I hit record on every camera at once. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with adrenaline. This was no longer a property dispute. This was a coordinated operation. The men moved toward the barn, the same barn Patricia had padlocked earlier. They spoke quietly, pointing at the hinges, the latch, the siding. They weren't here to lock something. They were here to break in. I bolted down the stairs, grabbed Dad's old flashlight and the crowbar he kept by the door, and slipped out the back. The grass was dewy, the air thick with tension. I stayed low, using Dad's old grain silo as cover as I crept toward the barn. When I reached the side window, I peeked inside. My blood ran cold. The men weren't trying to open the barn. They were planting something inside. A device. A small black box. One knelt beside a support beam while the other held a flashlight steady. My throat tightened. Was it a tracker? A camera? Or something worse? I took a shaky breath, hit record on my phone, and whispered, "What are you planting?" The one with the flashlight jerked his head up. Someone's outside. They moved fast. Too fast. I scrambled away from the window as the barn door rattled violently. Heavy boots stomped toward the side. My heart hammered against my ribs. I ducked behind a tractor, pressing my back to the cold metal. Their footsteps grew closer. One of them muttered, "Check the house. He's probably watching." The second replied, "Order said get it planted no matter what. The board wants leverage." Leverage? Leverage for what? I gripped the crowbar tighter. I couldn't run. If I ran, they'd know I was watching. If I fought, I'd be outnumbered. Then I remembered something Dad used to say. People expect you to panic when you're under pressure. So do the opposite. So I stood up, Calm, controlled, camera raised. The men froze when they saw the red recording light. What the hell are you doing on my father's property? I demanded. Private security has no jurisdiction here. The taller one lunged toward me, but the shorter stopped him. Don't. He's filming. Too late, I said. Already uploaded to cloud. I was bluffing. I had no cloud service set up, but they didn't know that. They backed up, slowly at first, then faster. The shorter man grabbed the device they planted, but to my surprise, he didn't remove it. He just pressed something on it. A tiny red light blinked twice. Then they ran. They sprinted back to the armored vehicle, jumped inside, and peeled out so fast they kicked up half the driveway gravel. I ran into the barn, flashlight beam shaking as it scanned the floor. There, wedged between the support beams, was a black device. Not a tracker, not a camera. Something else. Something with wiring, a battery pack, and a blinking light. I swallowed hard. My mind went blank except for one horrifying possibility. Explosive? I forced myself to breathe. Calm. Slow. Don't touch it. Document it. Record everything. I sent photos to the sheriff with the exact coordinates. My message was simple. Emergency. HOA sent armed men to plant illegal devices on private property. No reply. It was 3 a.m. I backed out of the barn slowly and sprinted toward the house. The blinking light felt like it was blinking inside my head. I slammed the door shut behind me and locked it. I paced the living room, mind racing. Why plant a device? What did they want to trigger? Pressure? A false violation? Or sabotage? I checked the cameras again. The armored truck was gone. The driveway empty. The silence deeper than before. Then the orchard camera flickered. Static. Blackout. Gone. One by one, each camera dropped offline. Barn. Driveway. Tool shed. Back fence. Gone. Someone was jamming the signal. My chest tightened. If the cameras were dead, I was blind. And being blind meant vulnerable. That was their plan. Take out my eyes first, then move in. I rushed through the house, checking windows, doors, locks. I grabbed Dad's old shotgun from above the mantel. It wasn't loaded, but I didn't need it to be. I just needed it visible. I turned on the porch light. Nothing. I flicked it again. Still nothing. They'd cut the power too. Okay, I whispered to myself, forcing a deep breath. Think. I grabbed a lantern from the pantry and lit it. Shadows danced across the room, but at least I could see. I hurried to the breaker box, but the switches were fine. Power wasn't tripped. It was cut from the outside. Then something tapped the window. Light. Quick. A flicker of movement. I snapped my head toward the sound. Another tap. Harder. I moved closer, lantern in hand, shotgun in the other. Another tap, like fingernails. Or metal. I swung the window open. Who's there? Nothing. Just darkness. Then footsteps. Fast. Someone ran across the yard. I chased him outside, lantern swinging wildly. I spun in circles, scanning the fields. My breath puffed in the cold night air. Every shadow looked alive, every rustle a threat. Then I saw it, a figure near the fence line, watching, still, facing me. I raised a shotgun. Show yourself. They didn't move. Who are you? Silence. I took a step forward. The lantern flickered, light catching the figure's face. My heart slammed into my ribs. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a hired security guard. It wasn't even a neighbor. It was the driver, Patricia's right-hand man. He raised a walkie-talkie to his mouth. I have eyes on him. The hair on the back of my neck prickled. Then he said something that made my blood freeze. Stage 2 ready. Stage 2? Before I could react, headlights exploded across the yard, bright, blinding from multiple directions. SUVs burst through the tree line, engines roaring, tires tearing through mud and grass. 3, 4, 5 vehicles. Patricia stepped out of the lead SUV, her silhouette sharp against the headlights. She didn't smile this time. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She simply pointed at me and said, "Take him." Men poured out of the SUVs. Private security, HOA board members, strangers I'd never seen before, all dressed in tactical gear, all advancing. I stumbled backward, lantern shaking in my hand. Get off my property. Patricia's voice cut through the chaos. You've interfered with official HOA operations, tampered with security devices, and obstructed compliance enforcement. I laughed, sharp, disbelieving. Compliance? You planted illegal devices and sent armed men to trespass. She didn't blink. You will be detained until we complete our review. Detained? I spat. You're not the police. Her eyes narrowed. No, but the county listens to us. The men close in. I backed toward the porch. My pulse surged. Then, the sound that changed everything. Sirens. Multiple. Fast. The SUVs froze. The men stopped. Patricia's eyes widened in pure shock. The sheriff's voice bellowed over a megaphone. Everyone stepped back from the property now. The HOA crew scattered, stepping away reluctantly. Patricia's jaw tightened. Her plan shattered. But as the sheriff approached her, hand on his holster, she whispered something that chilled me to the bone. This isn't over, Michael. You have no idea how far this goes. And for the first time, I believed her. I barely had a second to breathe as the sheriff's cruisers rolled onto property, lights flashing, sirens cutting through the cold morning air. The HOA's SUVs skidded to a stop, men leaping out like corner predators. But for the first time, I felt a sliver of hope. Finally, someone who could enforce the law and not just talk about it. The sheriff, a tall man with the kind of presence that makes people think twice before arguing, stepped forward, his hand on the holster, but calm. Everyone stay where you are, he barked. This property is private. No one moves an inch without my permission. Patricia's eyes narrowed. She looked around at the men she brought, then back at me, her expression unreadable. This isn't over, she hissed. I gripped my phone, still recording every second. It's over as long as the law's involved. I shot back. One of her men tried to protest, stepping toward the barn, but the sheriff waved him back with a single hand. Do you want to go to jail for trespassing and attempted intimidation? I didn't think so. Patricia's lips pressed together, but she didn't argue further. She knew she'd overstepped. Even she had limits, and right now, she was staring down someone who refused to back down. The sheriff walked the perimeter with me, inspecting the yard. You have evidence of tampering? He asked. I handed over the phone. Every second. Cameras, recordings, everything. He nodded. Good. That will hold in court. For the first time in hours, I felt a small wave of relief. The barn, the orchards, Dad's equipment. They were safe. But I knew better than to think this was truly over. Patricia didn't quit. She escalated. And she wasn't alone. I returned inside to check the black device the armed men had planted. I managed to trap in the tool shed before they could finish, but I didn't know what it was. Carefully, I opened the casing. Inside were wires and small battery, but thankfully, nothing hazardous. It was a tracking device, an attempt to monitor every movement on the farm. I held it up for the camera. Stage 2, huh? Guess you underestimated me. The sheriff stayed behind, speaking on the phone. Yeah, they tried to plant a device on private property. Multiple armed men. The HOAs overstepped. He paused, listening. Yes, all documented. I'll need copies of everything. After he left, I sat on the porch, hands shaking, heart still racing. My eyes scanned the farm. Every fence post, every tree, every barn, it was still ours. Dad had built this place with his hands. And despite the threats, it wasn't gone. But the fight wasn't just about the farm anymore. It was about principle. About standing up to people who thought they could use authority as a weapon, and it had just begun. I spent the rest of the morning contacting a property attorney, sending him all recordings, all screenshots, everything the HOA had tried. The legal system could be slow, but with the documentation, I had a strong case. They couldn't claim ignorance. They couldn't rewrite history. Then came an unexpected call. A journalist had seen my video posted online, the one I'd filmed during the first confrontation. She wanted to do a story. A real story about an overreaching HOA, private security, and farm owners fighting back. I hesitated. Public exposure was risky. But then I remembered Dad's words. Don't let anyone take advantage of you. I agreed. Within hours, footage from the farm went viral. Comments poured in. People were outraged. Supporters offered help, legal advice, even volunteers to protect property if Patricia escalated again. I knew I had to act smart. I strengthened locks, installed extra cameras, and even hired a licensed security consultant to audit the property. The sheriff assured me he'd patrol more frequently. Days turned into weeks, and the HOA attempted smaller, subtler moves, letters, vague legal threats, calls to neighbors, but they were no match for documentation, the public exposure, and the sheriff's watchful eye. Patricia called once, her voice venomous over the phone. "This isn't finished, Michael." I smiled. "Actually, it is. You just lost." The farm settled back into its rhythm. Chickens clucked, horses grazed, the orchard thrived. I walked the land, phone in pocket, but eyes everywhere, confident in what I protected. And somewhere deep down, I felt closer to Dad. He wasn't fully recovered yet, but when he finally returned, he looked over the property and grinned. "You did good," he said quietly. I nodded. We did it together. Weeks later, I received official confirmation. The county had rejected the HOA's expansion claim. Every document, every map, every recording I had saved proved the farm was ours. They had no legal claim. None. Patricia and her HOA retreated. Quietly. But the lesson was clear. Never underestimate someone willing to defend what's right. Never underestimate a family willing to fight. And never, ever think you can bully your way onto someone else's land without consequences. I uploaded a final video detailing every step, every encounter. The title, HOA tried to ban me from my dad's farm, so I recorded everything. It went viral, drawing thousands of comments from people who had faced harassment from overreaching authorities, from HOAs, or from anyone abusing power. I leaned back on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the trees. The farm was safe, the barn stood tall, the orchard blossomed. And me? I had grown too. I had learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was standing firm, recording the truth, and refusing to be intimidated. Patricia would try again, I knew that. But next time, I'd be ready, stronger, smarter, and the farm would remain ours. Because sometimes standing your ground means recording everything and never letting them see you sweat. And that's the story how a family farm survived an overreaching HOA, armed men, and staged intimidation. How documenting the truth, staying calm under pressure, and using every resource at your disposal can turn a nightmare into victory. The sun finally set behind the farm, painting the fields gold and orange. Birds chirped, horses nickered. The wind rustled through the trees. For the first time in weeks, I felt peace, but the camera still ran, just in case.